Okay. So we're doing now on page 12b, and we're starting the Mishnah. So the Mishnah is going to discuss about bringing on Yontiv some of the separated items that belong to the Kohen. Generally speaking, the Chachamim did not allow a person to separate Trumas and Maisris on Yontiv itself. Why? Because there is really no need. We'll see in the Gemara later on, but there is no need for a person to separate Trumas and Maisris on Yontiv. When you separate Trumas and Maisris, it looks like you're fixing and you're making the food, preparing it so you can eat it. It's like a tikkun. The Chachamim don't want you to do it if you're able to do it before Yontiv. You'll be hard pressed to find a situation that a person will have an obligation of Truma and Maisris on Yontiv itself. When is the person obligated for Trumas and Maisris? When he cuts the field from the field, he brings them in and he grinds them. These are all malachas that you have to do before Yontiv. You can't do it on Yontiv. So technically, Trumas and Maisris, you always give before Yontiv. And there is no allowance for giving Trumas and Maisris on Yontiv itself. On the other hand, challah, when you bake challah, so you make a dough, a person wishes to bake a fresh challah on Yontiv itself. That's considered oichel nefesh. Yes, he has the wheat. He could conceivably bake his challah on Erev Yontiv, but it's not going to be fresh. He wants fresh challah. That's oichel nefesh. The Chachamim allowed him to make a dough, knead it on Yontiv. Now, if he has a dough on Yontiv, if he's not going to separate the challah, he can't eat the bread from the dough. He has to separate the challah. So therefore, Chachamim said you can go ahead and separate the challah. Because if you don't separate the challah, you can't eat the dough and you can't have your fresh challah on Yontiv. So the Chachamim allowed to do that. What are you supposed to do with the challah that you separated? You're supposed to bring it to the kohen during the weekday. The issue becomes, on Yontiv, can you go ahead and take the challah that you separated from the dough? Yes, you're allowed to separate it, but are you also allowed to bring it to the kohen? And we have a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai said, yes, you can separate the challah on Yontiv, but there's no reason for you to go ahead and take the separated challah to bring it to the kohen on Yontiv. You can do that after Yontiv. So Beis Shammai says, Beis Shammai oimrim, ein meilichim challah.
So there's a difference between truma and challah. So on truma, you can't eat until you give the kohen the maser, but on challah, you as long as you've taken it, separated it, you can.
No, no, that's true with challah, but trumas and maisris, even before you give it to the kohen, you can still eat it. But over there, even the separation of the trumas and maisris cannot be done on Yontif. To begin with, forget about leading it to the kohen.
Oh, got
You're
it.
not
Right. I
allowed to
remember that.
even separate it because there's no reason. you should do it from before Yontif. There's no reason to do it on Yontif. So therefore, we're saying that Ein Melichin Chalo. Bishamai said, yes, you are allowed to separate the Chala on Yontif itself, but you're still not going to be allowed to bring it to the Kohen. Basically, as we'll see in Rashi in a minute, according to Beis Shammai, in this Mishnah understanding, everything should technically be prohibited. Not trumas and not maisrus and not to bring it to the Kohen. Everything is in one inclusive. The Chachamim don't want you to bring separated stuff to the Kohen because anything that you bring, it might lead you to also separate trumas and maisrus, which you're not allowed to do. So there's one general prohibition against bringing things to the Kohen at all. The two exceptions are, according to Beis Shammai, is you can actually separate the challah, but you're still not going to allow to bring it. You can also separate the portions of the animal that you have to give a gift to the kohen. Now, the portions of the animal, those are called the matonis over here, which includes the leg and the cheek and the stomach that belongs to the kohen, that you have to give to the kohen. That doesn't aser the rest of the animal from eating. So you will not, it's not like eating dough that hasn't given challah, you're not allowed to consume, that it becomes tevel, it's no good, you can't really use it. If you should eat the other parts of the animal without separation, you would be violating an essa, says Rashi, because there's a mitzvah when you eat the animals to separate it to the Kohen, and you didn't do it. So you're eating while there's an Isser there. So therefore, the Chachamim made an exception on Yontif, according to Beis Shammai. Yes, you know what? You want to shech the animal on Yontif because you want to have a fresh piece of meat. And if you're not going to separate the portion, the matonas that go to the kohen, you'll be eating the meat, violating the assay that you have to separate it. So they said that you can separate it, but that's as far as they go. From here on, you can't bring it to the kohen. You can bring the challah, and you can't bring this to the kohen. So therefore, Bishama again, Bishama Imrim Ein Melichin Challah. Ein Melichin Challah, says Rashi, Afal Pi Shemuter Behafroshoso, even though that we allow the person breaking the challah to separate the challah, Loi Shoru Lei Hoi Lo Choso. They did not permit him, according to the Beis Shammai, to lead it to the kohen. They didn't, to give it to the kohen, they don't allow you. Elo tikun l'sake nisosi. They only allowed for the correction to fix your dough, which means hitiruloi. Without separating the challah, you won't be able to eat it. So they only allow you to fix the dough, but v'lo yoser, not more than that. So to go lead it, they just restricted you, gave you just a minimal amount that they have to give you for the purpose of being able to make the dough, and therefore you can do it. Therefore you can separate, but you can't bleed it. As far as the matonis goes, what is the matonis? As far as the matonis, also you can't bring them. But the matonis, you don't technically have to separate them in order to eat the rest of the meat. Even if you don't separate the matonis for the kohen, you can eat the other parts of the animal, and you will not be eating something that you're not allowed to eat, but you would be violating a positive command because the Torah says you have to separate. You're not separating. So therefore, that too they allow you, but not to lead it. Let's go. Umatonis. What is matonis? So Rashi, what is these gifts from the animal that we give to the kohen? That's hazroya, that's the leg, val chaim, or the hand. I mean the front leg, and the cheek, the cave, and the stomach. Those are articulated elsewhere exactly what the sections, the portions that you give to the kohen. So he says, Avhain haramoson hutro loy. They too, to raise them and separate them, that was permitted to the person who wants to shech the animal on Yom Tov to have a fresh piece of meat. Why? Share nitztava laharimon. He was been instructed that you must separate, give these gifts to the kohen. Veheich yoichal shar habosor. So how is he going to be eating the rest of the meat if he's not going to separate it? Dr. Rashi, ba'afal pi she'ein toivlin kshar tevel lesser habosor ba'achila. Although they, the matonis, do not make it tevel like other tevel to prohibit the meat by eating. If you don't separate the challah from the dough, you can't eat the dough. If you don't separate the truma from the maestros, you can't eat it. So over there, it's a necessity. So here, Rashi asks, why should we allow you to give the gifts, separate the gifts on Yom Tov? It seems to be unnecessary because you can still eat the rest of it because it doesn't make the rest of the meat prohibited. However, still they allowed you to do it. Why? Shar habosar mehem. If you didn't separate the rest of them, in other words, you didn't separate those pieces that go to the kohen, you can eat it. But you'll be violating an essa of the mitzvah to give it to the kohen. So it didn't disqualify the rest of the animal from eating it. It's not tevel. It's not, but you're still eating without separate. So therefore, hilkoch haramosum itiru v'loy halachosum. They allowed you to raise it and not to lead it. And Rashi says, "V'kulon mishum gezeira de'in magbiin oisum." All in all, why did we make all these restriction? Is because we worry that you might raise the trumas and maestros too, and this is an all-inclusive. Even though you are allowed to separate the challah and you're allowed to separate, but to lead them, it's part of one gezeda. We don't want you to separate the trumas and maestros. And therefore, we're going to restrict everything, only the absolute necessity, which is to separate the challah and to separate the legs, but not to give it to the kohen. Okay. So that's what it says, matonos lekohen b'yontav, and yontav you can't bring it. Now, the Mishnah adds another statement over here. This that we're not allowing you to give it to the kohen, the Shammai is not going to allow you, even in a case where you didn't have an opportunity. So, Mele, you can say, if I shechted the animal on Erev Yontiv, and I should have given the gifts to the kohen then, if you separated it, but you shechted it before, and you separated before, why should you bring it on Yontiv? No. Even Bein Shehurmu Mehayim, even though we're learning, even though you shechted it today, you didn't have another opportunity. Now is the first opportunity you have to give it to the kohen because you just shechted it today. So whether you separate it from the day before, in which case it's obvious, more obvious that you should not be allowed to bring it to the kohen because you should have done it yesterday. Why do it today? Or Bein Shehur Mayom, even if it was separated today and it was shechted today, and everything happened today, so you didn't have any other time to bring it to the kohen. you're still not going to be allowed to. That's the opinion of Beis Shammai in the Mishnah. Ubeis Hillel matirim. On the other hand, Beis Hillel, they say that's permissible, which means in this case, Beis Hillel permits actually in both cases, which means even if you had an opportunity to do it the day before because you shechted it the day before, the Chachamim did not aser bringing things to the Kohen. If you want to bring the challah, if you want to bring the presence of the Kohen to the Kohen, you can go ahead and bring it. That's only that, but not Trumas or Maestras, because that's different. We'll see in the Gemara. Okay? So Beis Hillel said, leading to the Kohen, you can bring everything, whether you did it yesterday or today. And Beis Shammai said you can't do anything, whether yesterday or today. You cannot, even though you didn't have a chance, cannot bring it to the Kohen. So, Amar Lahem Beis Shammai Gzeira Shava. So they have an argument to them. He says, why don't you make a Gzeira Shava? Now, in this context here, Rashi explains, it's not really a Gzeira Shava. A Gzeira Shava is a Torah halacha. Beis Shammai is trying to argue to them that it should have the same halacha. He calls it Gzeira Shava. It means it should be the same halacha. Beis Shammai's argument is just like you agree, he's saying to Beis Hillel, that you are not allowed to bring the Trumas and the Maestras to the Kohen, you're not allowed to lead them. So the same thing should apply to bringing them the Matanas and the Challah. You should apply the same rule, should apply as applies for the Trumas and Maestras, should apply to the Challah and the Matanas as well. That's the argument. Omru lahem Beis Shammai. So Beis Shammai says to them, to Beis Hillel, Gzeira Shava. Why don't you make it the same? And Rashi says right away is Lav Davke. It doesn't really mean Gzeira Shava. The Kulu midrabanon gozer. It's all midrabanon. It's just it's not a posik. It's not a Gzeira Shava. Elodumya the Gzeira Shava midrabanon. This is similar as we say Gzeira Shava. We should apply the same thing when we talk about the Rabbanon. And what does he say? Chalo umatonis matona lekohen. The challah and the matonas are a gift for the kohen. It's a present. What is matona lekohen? That's me'esrim va'arba matnis kunahim. Both the challah and the matonas, the parts of the animal, are part of the 24 gifts of the kahuna. Also truma. Truma is not part of the 24. That's also matona lekohen, but it's also a gift for the kohen. Kishem shein melichin es hatruma. Just like you agree that truma you can't bring on yontif. You can't bring. I mean, the truma that you separated from yesterday, you can't bring on yontif. Because in Truma you agree to us. This was raised and separated yesterday. There's no reason you agree for them to go ahead and bring today the Truma to the Kohen. So why would you allow to bring the Matonis, especially from yesterday? Kach ein malichin as a Matonis. You're not allowed to leave the Matonis. Even the ones, because according to Beis Hillel, they even allow you to bring the Matonis from yesterday. Bein ma'yoim, bein ma'esmol, they're saying Matirin, they allow you. Even if you gave the Challah and the Matonis that you had from Erev Yontif, they allow you to bring it on Yontif to the Kohen. Why would you allow to bring it to the Kohen? It was from yesterday. Why do they allow that if they don't allow you to bring the Truma? Why would you allow that? That's Beis Shammai's argument to be similar. At least those matonis and challah that was done yesterday. Amru lahem Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel responds to them, Loi. No, that's not a good equation. Because matona, truma, maestros, truma, can never be given on Yontif. So truma is never carried on Yontif. So the Chachamim never allowed to carry truma on Yontif. But challah is done on Yontif. Matanas are done on Yontif. So therefore you can carry it. Amrullah Beis Hillel. So even a matone or challah that was done yesterday could still be done today. Amrullah Beis Hillel, no. If you say by truma that you can't lead it, zakai baharamosa, because he's not privileged, he's not entitled to separate truma on yontif. So you can never bring it. She'ena zakai means he's not privileged. Rashoyi loy nosnu chachamim laodom koyachus chuzbaf rashosa. The chachamim did not give a person the power and the privilege to separate. On Yontif, there is no separation done of Truma on Yontif. So, therefore, we agree you can't carry Truma on Yontif because there's no Truma on Yontif, period. Can you then extend it to Matonas? Matonas and Chala, he has a privilege. He can give it on Yontif. Since he can give it on Yontif, he can lead it on Yontif. And since he can lead it on Yontif, he can even bring the ones from yesterday also on Yontif. That's okay.
Bring the truma from yesterday?
No,
not the truma. You can
the
bring
challah
and the matanas.
And matanas from Erev Yontif, you can bring it also. Because there is, you since you can do it on Yontif, so that's already allowed. You can bring yesterday's also to the Kohen today. It doesn't matter. That's the Mishnah. The Gemara now is going to bring down different opinion what Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are arguing about. As far as we were learning right now, the assumption, we made it clear from the Gemara that whether it was shechted on before Yontif or even shechted on Yontif, Beis Shammai will not allow you to lead it to the Kohen. It's not only if it was shechted, because what does it say? The language of the Mishnah is, Bein shahurmu me'emesh, whether they were raised yesterday, Bein shahurmu me'hayoim, or they were separated today. We are learning, why did you separate them today? Because they were shechted today. Now, notice you can really say, the Gemara is going to say that later, you can say, well, whether they were separated today or they were yesterday or today, but they were shechted yesterday. But we're learning right now the Mishnah, not to confuse you anymore, not to confuse the situation more. Here we're learning very clearly that Beis Shammai doesn't allow to lead to the Kohen, even though you shechted it today because you wanted the fresh piece of meat today, and you separated it today, and he still doesn't allow you to bring it to the Kohen. That's the way we understood the Mishnah. We'll see soon that we change that. And because we say that, we're going to see that this goes against other interpretation of what Beis Shammai holds. The first opinion we're going to bring down is going to be the one of Rabbi Yehuda. The first opinion the Beitzah is going to bring down is Rabbi Yehuda. according to Rabbi Yehuda, it says very clearly that even Beishamai will agree that you could lead it to the kohen if you shechted it today and you separated it today. That conflicts with our Mishnah, because our Mishnah, it says, even if it was shechted today, Beishamai still says you can't lead it to the kohen. In the next statement of Rabbi Yehuda in the Beitzah, it's going to say clearly that Beishamai disagrees with that. So that would tell us that the Mishnah does not go like Rabbi Yehuda. Let's go one step at a time. Let's go look now inside the Gemara. The Gemara says, Kosalka daitach. It entered our mind. We're assuming right now, basically assumption is that what does it mean, shahurmu mahayoim? The fact that we are not allowing you, Beishamai doesn't allow you, it says, whether it was separated today. What does it mean that it was separated today? It was shechted yesterday, you just separated today? Or it was separated today because you shechted it today? The assumption is that it was shechted, that's why you separated today. In other words, Beishamai prohibits it even though it was shechted today. That's what we're trying to say. Because when the Mishnah says, even if it was raised today, it's understood, or we're assuming the assumption is that it was actually shechted today as well. And still, Beishamai says no. So, Gemara is teaching now. So, what does it mean, shohurmu ma'ayoim, when it says they were raised today? It means that they were shechted today. And still, Beishamai just says, no, I don't care that it was shechted today, you still can take it to the kohen. Right? And also, what does it mean, v'shahurmu me'emesh? Means v'shenishchatu me'emesh, that it was shechted from the day before. Okay, the main point is we want the hayoim, meaning that even if it was shechted on Yontev, still Beishamai is not going to allow. And the Gemara says, and shahurmu me'emesh means that if they took them yesterday because they were shechted yesterday, so it's really about the shechita, when the shechita was done. That Beishamai will prohibit whether the shechita was done yesterday, whether the shechita was done today. You're not going to allow to lead it to the kohen. That's the opinion of Beishamai. In that case, the Gemara argues, Moni Masnis in our Mishnah cannot follow Loi Rabbi Yosi, not according to Rabbi Yosi or the following Rabbi Yosi, but Loi Rabbi Yehuda and not Rabbi Yehuda, Ela Achedim. It's not such a comfortable thing to say that the Mishnah goes, but you're going to see, the Gemara is going to start analyzing.
So wouldn't you have to say, if you can't bring the truma to the kohen, then you can't eat the meat, so you shouldn't be able to shecht it?
If you can't bring the truma, no, what are you talking truma, or are you talking meat is not truma? You mean what you separated? You mean the matanis?
Yeah, the matanis. If you can't bring it to the kohen, then you can't eat it.
Yeah, you could eat it. You could eat it. Because we said, have you separated, but you don't have to give it to the kohen. Okay. You can separate it, but keep it, and after Yom Tov, you bring it to the kohen. Okay? But the Gemara says that mani masnisin loy Rabbi Yosi v'loy Rabbi Yehuda el achedim, loy Rabbi Yehuda el achedim karsina. The Tanya, we bring down a brayso. So first we bring down Omar Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says loy Rabbi Yosi loy Rabbi Yehuda, but it starts with Rabbi Yehuda. Loy nechlaku Beishamai u'Beis. He says that Beishamai and Beis Hillel don't disagree. He says if you shechted the animal on Yom Tov, even Beishamai says go ahead and take it to the kohen. Not only that, he goes even further. He says if you have shechted animal on Yom Tov, and therefore you're allowed to lead the matonis and the challah to the kohen, you can actually tag along the chalas and matonis that you have from yesterday. He says the only machloikis is when does Beit Shammai say you can't do it? Only from the ones that were yesterday shechted. That you can't. But what was shechted today, you could. Let's look inside. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Yehuda, Loi nechleku Beis Shammai Beis Hillel al hamatonis, that Beis Shammai still don't argue matonis shehurmu me'erev Yom Tov. Here we're talking about matonis that were said erev Yom Tov. You can still shemelichim im hamatonis shehurmu me'hayoim, that you can take him along with matonis that are today. V'shenishchatu me'hayoim, those who were shechted and raised today, you can bring them together. Clearly, Beis Shammai says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that you can take the matonis and the challah, you can take them all to the kohen, even what you have left over, even what you have from the day before.
But is that only if you're bringing something from that you became chayav on today? Then you can bring stuff before, not
exactly
okay.
Together. Yes, okay. Exactly. But what do we see? That things that you shechted on Yom Tov, for sure you could, because he even allows you to take along. So things that you have, that you shechted on Yom Tov, even Beis Shammai agrees that you're allowed to. And what did it say in our Mishnah? Bein shemer smel ubein mahayoim. Beis Shammai says you can't lead it to the kohen. So this goes directly opposes Rabbi Yehuda, correct? Shemalichin oison chulu. So Knash umasnisin kotoni. But in the Mishnah it says, Bein shohurim mahayoim. They were separated today, and the understanding is you shechted them today, and they were separated today. You can hear from the Gemara is constantly saying that this was the thought that the Gemara is going to answer, no, that that's not really what the Mishnah means. When the Mishnah says they were separated yesterday, but they weren't shechted today, they were shechted the day before, and you separated to them, then you can't bring him to the kohen. The case that Rabbi Yehuda is talking about is if you actually shechted something today, then Beis Shammai agrees that you can take it to the kohen. But the Mishnah talks about that's the Gemara's answer going to be. But right now, the assumption is that the Mishnah doesn't allow, Beis Shammai doesn't allow in the Mishnah, even if it was shechted on Yom Tov. Because Alka Daitoch, the Benishchatu Hayom Komaydi, V'asur, and he asked the Asur. And what does he say? When is the machloikas? Not to bring them along. Elo lehoilichon bifnei atzmem. The machloikas is to take those that were shechted from before Yom Tov, just to take them on their own on Yom Tov itself.
That makes perfect sense because as we said in the Mishnah, they could have done it. They could have done it the other day.
Yeah, okay, but we'll see why Beis Hillel. But Beis Shammai Emrim Ein Melichin. Beis Shammai says don't carry. There's no reason to do it, like you're saying. Beis Hillel Emrim Melichin. Beis Hillel say anytime you can leave. If it is matones, if it's challah, go ahead. Take it on Yom Tov. Doesn't matter. We don't care. So, what was Beis Shammai's argument to Beis Hillel? They have an argument according to the Kachoy Beis Shammai done it. So the following was Beis Shammai argument, and they say that challah umatonis matona lekoyin. Challah and matonis are both a koyins. Utruma matona lekoyin. Truma is also matona lekoyin. So what do they say? Truma itself, Beis Hillel will agree that you separated yesterday. You can't bring it today, right? You can't bring the matonas. the truma from yesterday, for sure you're not going to bring today. So why should you bring the challah? Amrullah Beisil says no. Truma has nothing to do with yontiv, and truma you can't bring ever a yontiv. Since challah and matonas, sometimes you can bring it on yontiv. When you separate it on yontiv, so even if they don't come not tagged along, even though you shechted it from before you, it's okay. By truma you can't sheina zakai baramosa. You're not entitled on yontiv. You can't barama. So therefore, truma can never be brought on yontiv. It can never separate on yontiv. You can never give it on yontiv to the kohen. But matonis and challah can be. Sometimes you have a right to do it on yontiv, and therefore you can bring anytime you want. You can bring the chalas and the matonis on yontiv. Toimru matonis shezakai baramosa. Over there, you're entitled to on yontiv. Across the board, you can always do that. So that's the machlokes. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if it's shechted and yontiv, everybody agrees you can bring them, unlike our Mishnah. If it was shechted or the dough from before yontiv, Beishamai says no, and Beis Hillel says you can still bring chalas and matones on yontiv itself. Now comes the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, of Rabbi Yossi. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yossi, I'm sorry, says Rabbi Yossi, Leinechlaku Beishamai uBeis Hillel al hamatones shemelichim. There is no disagreement between Beishamai and Beis Hillel that you can always bring the matones. We're saying even Beishamai agrees to what Rabbi Yehuda said before the opinion of Beis Hillel. He says matones and challah you can bring on yontiv even from yesterday, and even Beishamai agrees to that. Lo nechleku Beishamai uBeis Hillel al hamatones shemalichim. Even Beishamai will agree matones and chalas you can bring on yontiv. Al hamatones shemalichim zokt Rashi hoil v'zakai baramosom. Like Beishamai said before, since you can separate the matones and you can give challah, it's shy, then you can bring to the kohen even from the day before. Within l'challah, even though the Mishnah just says matones, chad menai nokad, he's just mentioning one of them, so you can do that. The only machlokes is about whether you can bring truma. This goes a step further. He wants to even allow, according to Beis Hillel, even truma you can bring to the kohen and yontif from before yontif. You can bring them. Shebeshama yemrim ein melichim comes to truma. Beis says you can't bring. Beis Hillel emrim melichim. Beis Hillel said you could bring. Why should you be able to bring the truma? You're not zakai baramosa at all. Why would this be so? So now we're saying the kacho you Beis Hillel donim, and this was the way Beis Hillel was learning this out. He says like this: Chalo umatones matone lekoyin. Chalo and matones is a gift to a koyin. Utruma matone lekoyin. So kishem shemalichim esamatones, you can bring the matones. Everybody agrees. Kach malichem esatruma, you can bring also the truma. What different? We bring everything that you want. You can bring to the kohen. Amrullah Beishamai loy. That's not the. Im amartem be matones shezakai b'haramoso. By matones, he is entitled haramosom, so it doesn't apply to the challah and to the matones. Bring it from yesterday, from today, bring it to the kohen. He has no right on yontiv. So to go ahead and bring truma, Beishamai says no. Beis Hillel says bring everything to the kohen. Doesn't matter. Okay. So we have these two opinions. Achedim Oimrim. We have another opinion called Achedim.
Who is that a particular person or just
Yeah, well, the Gemara says that a certain Tana are called Achedim. The Loche, the Gemara in Herius, because they caused some issues over there with the Nasi, so they gave him the name Achedim. They called him Achedim Emrim. So he says that Loi Nechluku B'Shamay U'B'Silal Ala Truma She'ein Melichim. He says, no, disagree with Truma. Everybody agrees Ein Melichim. We said before. Loi Nechluku Elo Al Hamatonos. The Machloikis is only about Matonis. What does it mean? Only on the Matonis, meaning that if Rashi says Al Matonis, there's still a Machloikis by Matonis, whether today or from before. Shebeshamay Emrim Ein Melichem. This is just like we learned our Mishnah. Beishamai says you can't bring matanas and challah, you can't bring at all. Beisila lemri melichin, and Beisila say that you could leave. So therefore, lema achedim he v'lei Rabbi Yehuda. Shall we say this achedim and not like Rabbi Yehuda? Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, Beishamai agrees that you could bring, if it's shechted on Yom Tov, you could bring it to the kohen, the challah and the matonas. And in our Mishnah it says Beishur Mayem Meshur Ma'esmel, that you can't. This was the whole problem with. But Rabbi Yossi for sure doesn't go like, because Rashi Lema Chedim Le Rabbi Yehuda. Klemer Rabbi Yossi Vadai. For sure, we cannot interpret like Rabbi Yossi, because according to Rabbi Yossi, there's no disagreement with regards to matonis and challah. It's only about truma, which is against our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says clearly that not by truma; it's only about challah and matonis where there is a machlokes. So Rabbi Yossi is out of the picture for sure. But the Mishnah wants to say, we can definitely not say like Rabbi Yossi, because according to Rabbi Yossi, there's no machlokes by challah and truma, by challah and matonis. The only machlokes by truma, so that's not like our Mishnah. But the question is, Rabbi Yehuda might. Can we be able to say the masnisin davke b'shalemesh ka'omar? Maybe the Mishnah is also talking about that he shechted it yesterday, and that's when the Mishnah says that Beis Hillel say that you can't do it. That it was only if it's done as yesterday, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, he doesn't allow if it's done on the yontiv itself. So, maybe also the Mishnah, even though it says Ma'ayim, but it means the shechita was done yesterday, and that's why Beis Shammai doesn't allow it. Then we can go like Rabbi Yehuda, because the only time Rabbi Yehuda doesn't allow it, according to Beis Shammai, if it was shechted yesterday. If it was shechted today, say Beis Shammai is a moida. So our Mishnah also holds so, and our Mishnah says Bein Mahayim is also talking about it was Yom today, but it was shechted from the day before, and that's why you're not allowed to. Or maybe we have to say it doesn't go like Rabbi Yehuda because our Mishnah says that even if it was shechted today, because it says Bein Mehayoim, still Beis Shammai is going to not going to allow it. Beis Shammai is going to say no. And the Gemara says, you're right. It doesn't say that it was raised today and shech today. Mikotoni masnisin. Bein shehurma v'nishchatu ma'ayoyim. No. Ul'olam shchitosu me'emesh. Abel, it was talking about Abel Bahanach nishchatu b'yomtev. Moidu b'shama is moidi. Shehurma kotoni. Ul'olam shchitosu me'emesh. So it's talking about, our Mishnah is talking about when does our Mishnah say that Beis Shammai doesn't allow? It's only if it was shechted from the day before. That's when you're not allowed to. But that's what the Mishnah says. Even though the Mishnah says Urim Mahayoy means it was raised today, but it was shechted from yesterday. So the Gemara says Leimer Rabbi Yehuda he v'lo yachedim. So now maybe we're going to say it goes like Rabbi Yehuda, not like Achedim. Why? Leimer Rabbi Yehuda v'lo yachedim. On the masnis in Davke Bishdishel Emesh Koyi, it's talking about Davke from the day before. That's we're talking about that it was Shechter the day before. That's when Beis Shammai as Moide Midloikoton Nishchito Yom. It just said they were separated today. Neimo the Loik Achedim. So maybe it doesn't go like the Achedim. But you know what? Let's leave this over here because I'm getting over here again in this. And let's leave it over here from Laban of Yehuda. And we'll start next week over here.
Okay, terrific.
Okay, we learned something. And
we clarified what we learned.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a